Ladies and gents, welcome back. We're back again here talking with Marty Up North. I want to say welcome to the show. This is a little bit different. We've been talking so much about Alberta politics for the past few months, I guess. Now every Wednesday, it's become a routine, and here we are talking about other things.
And I was biting my tongue. Every time we spoke in the last 4 or 5 shows, we tried to focus entirely on Alberta politics, which is what I wanted to do. But it's so hard to ignore federal politics. So, I'm going to say it out loud. Thankfully, the Alberta election's behind us, so I can forget about that for a while. And let's go back to the really, really bizarre world of federal politics in Canada.
Yeah,
it's a bizarre world.
And well, how bizarre is it that we have another federal government, the Chinese Communist Party, interfering within our party? And well, we only know about this not because our federal government said, hey guys, we just want you to know. No, we got wind from leaks from our intelligence services, from CSIS, leaking it to the press because the PMO, the Prime Minister's office, decided, nope, we're just going to hang on to this information. We're not going to let anybody know. Frustration came out, and now we're going through an inquiry that was brought about by the guy who's being investigated, handed off to a guy that is family friends of the guy who's being investigated, and also a member of the foundation, which bears his name. I mean, that is also under investigation because they received money from Beijing as well. How do you wrap your head around all this?
Well, no, I'm listening to you. So, okay, so let's wrap our mind around. Let's break it up into a little bit. So, yes, I think countries around the world are running into a problem in the last decade. Elections seem to have interference from other governments, and not just elections. I mean, there are interference from other governments, and I think we've always suspected that China was interfering, trying to dominate the world, and is interfering in a lot of things. And the relationship between Canada and China is probably sort of unique in the world. I mean, we provide a lot of resources for China. I mean, China is a juggernaut, right? It's a giant country of billions of people, and we're a giant country, but we have almost nobody, but we provide a shit ton of resources to China. And I think China is not just, we've always suspected that China is not just happy being on the sideline buying from us. They interfere. They buy assets in Canada. They take control of corporations and things like that. And I guess we're finding out that they're taking control of our government in a sense. And people have broken stories about that many times in the last 3 or 4 years, but recently it really broke out when we have MPs actually saying that they've been harassed and interfered with, and it boiled over to the point where we had let's link it back. Also, we had the fiasco. I don't know if I'd call it a fiasco. Yeah, I'll call it a fiasco. I mean, we had a very important Chinese executive who flew from the U.S. through Vancouver. We got a phone call, asked them from the U.S. asking us to detain this person. So we did. And in return, the Chinese kidnapped, I would say, or detained 2 of ours. So there's this really weird dynamic going on between Canada, China, and the U.S.
Well, speaking of that claim, the part of the leak that leaked to the Globe and Mail was an allegation that Han Dong himself was actually in communication with Chinese officials saying that it would be nice if you kept them in jail longer because it would look good for the Conservatives if you let them out during this election cycle, which is, of course, the allegation. I'm not making these claims, but no. He actually stepped down from the Liberal Party over this. Normally that's not what people do when they're completely innocent of a claim, but I mean that's just speculation there. I mean these are that was serious allegations here.
No, there's so many of these. So then I guess for the listeners who don't entirely know, then this came up. So people in the House of Commons, the government wanted the citizens through their MPs wanted an investigation into this, and the government of Trudeau at this point refused to simply investigate this. We tried to get an investigation going through motions in the House and things like that, but instead we didn't. Trudeau did this really weird thing. He appointed somebody that he calls a rapporteur, which, is a French word, which means somebody who will report back. So he appointed somebody to go and look into this further and report back to Canadians whether this is worth investigating. And again, this is where it gets hilarious, because he appointed, as you said, kind of a family friend. It's not a family friend. It is a family friend. He appointed the Governor General. And the Governor General should have recused himself from this, because he's way too connected to the Trudeau to Trudeau himself. I mean, he's connected through the Trudeau Foundation. He was appointed Governor General. Sure, he was appointed Governor General by the Conservatives, but the Trudeaus lived on the same property. They skied together. There's all sorts of stories, and fundamentally, I really don't give a shit. We've talked a little bit about this. There's a clear conflict of interest that the Governor General is not independent enough to report on something this critical.
Even to the point where Jagmeet Singh is feeling the political pressure to actually get out there and say, there's a conflict of interest. Would you step down, please? Not putting anything on the line, though, of course. Not putting at risk the coalition that they have in the federal level, which is just absurd. I mean, like, at the end of the day, it's where do we go with this? Do you think anything's going to come of it, or is it just too early to tell?
He seems to be digging his heels in the David Johnston, the former Governor General. I mean, he's going ahead. Well, He said, what did he say the other day? He said that he doesn't actually work for Trudeau. He works for the government of Canada. So
he said he didn't work for Parliament. He works for the government.
Didn't work for Parliament.
Which I guess he's referring to the executive branch solely, which means he's working directly for the guy he was neighbors with growing up. And yeah, it looks like too much of a conflict of interest. People are very adamant that he steps down, but he just clearly won't. Oh, and of course, O'Toole. Even O'Toole wrote an op-ed where he pointed out that by the time he got to O'Toole for an interview, they were already in the translation stage of the report. So they had completed the report before Aaron O'Toole had even spoken to the rapporteur, which is it reeks. This whole situation reeks.
Well, it reeks even further because parliamentarians can't even see what the full report that the rapporteur wrote without signing a non-disclosure agreement that's even more binding than what they currently have. So yes, the Pierre Poilievre is the leader of the Conservative Party, and he's also the leader of the opposition. So the guy is like completely vetted from a security point of view. He's one of the most senior MPs in Canada, but he can't. They want him to sign a further non-disclosure agreement in order just to go look at that report. Now he's clever enough; he knows what they're trying to do because these agreements they're so binding, absolutely, that if he sees something and he gets elected as the prime minister of the country, he still wouldn't be able to speak about what he's seen. So,
it's dirty.
Yeah, it's dirty, and I'm almost confused about it. I mean, I thought that the rapporteur comes back and says there's something worth investigating. Perfect, thank you. Here's your $200,000 check, and now let's investigate. But he's coming back and saying there's maybe something worth investigating, and I'll continue investigating. And that's not what we want. No. I don't care. Like, I really don't care. It has to be investigated by somebody completely impartial.
The one that got my goat the most was the fact that he came out and said, if you saw all of the evidence, you and the full context, you would think, oh, I see, there's nothing really going on. And then you say, well, can we see the full context? No, it's classified. You're not allowed.
It's classified.
Get out of here. Yeah. The context that we've seen so far warrants an investigation, and that's kind of where we at. But let's move on, because there's so many.
Yeah, let's move on.
There's many other things to talk about here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to get into the wildfires that are are happening across Canada, because this is a big issue. A lot of them started, well, coincidentally, during an election in Alberta, and they've moved on. There's some in British Columbia here. We're only starting to see the smoke. I mean, this is normal for us in British Columbia, but for Eastern Canada, this is a little bit out of the norm. And of course, they're coming in with the same politics of climate change. This is due to climate change, when if you're paying attention to the news and you're not just paying attention to the sound bites, you'll see that there has been a record number of arson prosecutions or arrests for arson. And I believe there's one in Alberta where a woman was charged with 32 counts of arson. And this is going all the way across to a report that I saw just yesterday, where it was a few arsons, arrests were made in Nova Scotia. So
yeah,
it's funny because climate change all seems to be happening in Canada right now during political turmoil, but you go south of the border, there's not a lot of climate change happening.
Well, and these fires supposedly happen very, the fires follow borders. Apparently fires don't jump the border. So yeah, I'm surprised you said there's a few in BC, but it was very apparent that the ones in Alberta were very strategic. I said it in a previous show that the ones in Alberta, to me, were always close to a small town, but far enough and far enough from a primary highway to be difficult to get at. So it looked to me like somebody purposely drove a pickup truck just to the limits of where they could go and set fires. So so right now there's the ones in Nova Scotia that I mean, I've never heard of forest fires being a big issue in Nova Scotia. So and yeah, well, we're rambling a little bit. To me, they're not new. To me, like you, forest fires, for the viewers, I do hiking videos, and you can go back through 10 years of my hiking videos, and annually there's one or two of my videos that have a hazy background because there's forest fires somewhere. So it's and smelling smoke in the air is not uncommon. People right now, you'd think that people in Toronto have never smoked or have never smelled smoke before. I mean, we've smelled smoke all the way from Russia. I remember years where there's no fires around here, and they go, yeah, well, it's the ones in Russia. So yeah, I mean,
it's pretty heavy in some areas, and I have.
Yeah, I'm sick of everybody jumping on the bandwagon. Like right now, Guilbeault, the environment minister, seems to be going over the top as using. The harder he pushes, the more suspect I get. So they're trying to push that we need a bigger carbon tax to fight fires. And like you pointed out, there's no carbon tax in the US. And right now there's no fires in the US. So if the carbon tax is the solution, then explain to me why there's no fires in the US. But as you pointed out, they shouldn't talk about them as wildfires. They're not wildfires. No, they're arson.
These are arson, yeah. And a lot of people are speculating that it's for a political agenda to raise the awareness around climate change and get people riled up about that. But let's move on to something else in Canada that's been pretty outrageous, and that is the Paul Bernardo. Maybe some people are too young to even remember who he was. Him and his Carla Homolka, his wife or his compadre in this.
His wife. He was nicknamed the Scarborough Rapist at one point. I mean, he raped at least a dozen women prior to his trial, and then he killed 3 women. I don't remember their name, like Kristen Mahaffey, or Kristen French and another girl. He got convicted for 2 of them, for 2 murders. He didn't get convicted for the third because there was a plea bargain or whatever, and we found out about the third one later. Anyways, he's serving pretty much a life sentence in Kingston, which in Canada, for viewers, a life sentence is only maximum of 25 years, but they're going to keep him in there for longer because he's going to be deemed a very dangerous sexual offender. But the story is that they just recently, this past couple of weeks, they transferred him to a medium security prison somewhere outside of Kingston. I don't know if it's because of his health or whatever, but me personally, I really don't give a shit. He should stay and rot in jail for a long, long time. And it's just another example. We're Canadians. We're just asking for answers, and we're not getting any transparency from our government, from the Parole Board of Canada, and with all the stuff that's been going on lately of the the whole issue around people reoffending when they're on bail and stuff like that. Like we have this is just something else that shows that our justice system is perhaps needs some pretty serious overhaul. That's the story as it is right now. But personally, Paul Bernardo should rot in jail, because since he's been in jail, he wrote a book. He actually wrote a book probably around 2018 that became a bestseller on Amazon, and then they withdrew it because you can't profit from your crimes. But in that book, he also admitted to other rapes and other things. The guy's he's a sick man, very sick man.
Yeah, it reminds me of a similar situation with O.J. Simpson. He wrote a book, If I Did It, and that was yeah. Apparently, he was sued though by the family of his victims, and then they got the rights to it, and they changed the name of the book to. They didn't change the name of the book. They just they put the "if" really really small in the font, and it just said "I did it," and it had his face on it.
Yeah.
So that was I guess their revenge to him. But yeah, of course, our government a little too soft on crime. That's been the trend as of lately. A lot of people out on the streets, and here we have one of the biggest monsters in Canadian history, getting in most people's perspective, soft treatment in being put to minimum security. But let's move on, because there's the budget. The budget is being delayed right now, and this is the new budget coming out for 2023. They're holding it up. The Conservatives are saying, nope, this is not happening, especially after the news of the higher interest rates. A lot of people were speculating that they were going to not go higher with the interest rates. I kind of had a bet with friends. I said they were going to go up by 25 basis points, and I was spot on with that. They need to. They need to go actually much higher with the interest rates. Unfortunately, that's the cure, right, for this whole fiscal situation that we're in. It's been too low, too long, and this is what's led to all the irresponsible borrowing from the government, and also in the private sector as well. A lot of malinvestment happens with that.
Well, so the interest rate is 4.75 today, which that's the prime rate for the bank. And the Bank of Canada, by the way, it's been very quiet, but the Bank of Canada announced its full year results a couple of weeks ago, and I'm surprised nobody talked about it, because the Bank of Canada lost nearly $1 billion in 2022, which is the first time in its 87-year history that the Bank of Canada has lost money. So the Bank of Canada is losing a huge amount of money. Interest rates have to be brought up to counter. I think it's terrible. I mean, it's things like the government. Some people praise the government for their response to COVID, but I think it was a little bit careless. I mean, they were borrowing money with no intention of ever paying it back, and that comes back to haunt you at some point. So Canada borrowed too much money and printed too much money. I love the quote from last year. Last year somebody asked the Prime Minister, what's going to happen? Somebody asked Trudeau last year, what's going to happen when interest rates start going up? And he looked at the journalist, Glenn, I think is his name. He's like, Glenn, interest rates are at an all-time low, Glenn. Like, don't you know?
I've seen that clip so many times. He asked, how are you going to service the debt? And he didn't mention the rates, but he just asked, how are we going to service the debt if we're going to raise that, if we're going to borrow that much money?
And which brings up, have you seen the video of Chrystia Freeland at the committee talking about that? That was one of the most frustrating moments ever. I mean, an MP, a Conservative MP, just asked her a simple question. They never answer the simple questions, but he's like, what is the debt servicing component of the budget? And she wouldn't answer. Like,
how much do we have to pay? What is the number?
How much do we have to pay? And she kept saying, well, I like to put a context to the numbers. Like, no, we don't give a shit about the context. What's the number? I went and looked up the number. Like that was a couple of weeks ago. But the debt servicing is about $48 billion. And we have a what do we have? We have a $450 billion budget at the federal government. $4 trillion budget, whatever it is. It's 10%. Am I getting 40? Yeah, the debt servicing is 10%. We are spending $40 billion a year just servicing debt. And then buried in the budget, the government this year had to rapidly borrow another 500 million or five. God, I'm getting my numbers wrong. They borrowed another $500 billion just to pay off debt that was coming due this year. So the government's using one credit card to pay another credit card. And that's one of the reasons that the Conservatives don't want to approve this budget. I think they're trying to filibuster. I don't know why they don't make it well, they have no choice because because Jagmeet Singh is still propping the government, and he's a hilarious one because Singh has been extremely critical of the Chinese interference fiasco, but he keeps saying, but I'm not critical enough to defeat the government. Yeah. And today did you hear him speaking today? Like, his pet project, he kept saying, is the dental care or what for children. And I don't want to kill this budget, because if I do that, then I will deny children the proper dental care they deserve. Like, it was like, like he won't do his job. He should. The government.
Trudeau's calling the same card. I heard that when he was speaking against Pierre Poilievre in the question period. But another one of the things that's not talked about a lot is the unfunded liability of pensioners, people who are going to be moving into retirement in the next 10 years or so. They didn't save the money. Our contributions to the Canadian pension plan didn't go into a savings account. They went into the debt servicing, and they went into paying for bills that were already due. They're paying for new expenditures. So this is another unfunded liability that we're going to add to the budget that isn't currently a part of that budget.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, almost all revenues go into one big pool. I think there is a small little thing called the Canada Pension Plan, which is, I think there is a small.
It's current payments. That's not savings for future payments.
No, and that's something that's I think they were counting. I mean, fundamentally, what they were counting on is that there would be, when the Canada Pension Plan was first created, what was it? It was like 16 workers contributing for every pensioner kind of thing. So their long-term strategy was always to have way more workers, way more people contributing. Well, that's flipped. I mean, I think we're down to 2 or 3 workers per person pulling a pension out of the Canada Pension Plan. Yeah, they didn't fund it, and they had this premise that there would always be workers, but that's not going to happen, which is another interesting thing. I just quickly in passing, last week I was looking at statistics. So Alberta grew organically last quarter by about 4,000 people. So by organic meaning, we had more births than we had deaths. And then only 3 other provinces grew organically: Ontario, Saskatchewan, and BC, just ever so slightly. But the other ones were like almost nothing. And then the other 6 provinces are decreasing, so they're not replacing themselves. And we're only a decade away from all provinces not replacing themselves. So these problems are going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. So we have to bring in immigrants.
New people.
And we've brought in immigrants many times in our history. I mean, it's great to have people come to this country, but for now, I think the problem now in the short term is we need so many immigrants, and they don't have time to integrate. I mean, when you bring in 1 million immigrants right now, it's for a problem that's 10 years down the road. I think it's going to create new problems. We can't house them. We don't. So we have. Man, I wouldn't want to be a politician right now. Well, actually, I would. You know what? I would be. I would like, because these are the kinds of problems that I used to like.
Hard problems that have difficult solutions. Yeah,
absolutely. Put the data down, bring the good minds together, and let's talk about it. And let's not bullshit. But when you look at what our government's doing, I mean, we have out of control inflation. We have printing that's going on. The banks are are losing money. Then we're tapping on a carbon tax that's making things worse. And then we're just not making any progress on some of these big issues right now.
Well, not if you're Chrystia Freeland. I was just watching her speech, and apparently the Canadian economy is the best in the G7. We're doing the best that we've ever done since COVID. The recovery was 150%. It's just unbelievable.
And again, it is unbelievable, and it's frustrating because again,
nobody's experiencing this.
No, and when you create a budget, I used to do this at work all the time. Like you create a budget, and then to give your budget a sort of you want to boil down your budgets into a couple of quick metrics and see if something makes sense. So an example in Canada when we do our budgets is we compare the budget and the debt to our gross domestic production. So we do these ratios based on that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Chrystia Freeland keeps saying. Oh no, we're okay because our debt to GDP is trending at a ratio that they claim is okay. But then you have to do the quality check to the GDP. What are they doing to the GDP? And when you look at the GDP forecast, they're forecasting this GDP to go sky high in the future, so that they're forecasting that everything will look good. Why are they forecasting a sky high GDP in the future? Because we're bringing in 1 million extra immigrant year after year. So they're going, well, those immigrants are going to get $100,000 a year jobs. So it's going to add whatever, $10 billion to the economy.
And there's other ways of flubbing the numbers, like adding government jobs to the GDP. I mean, they're a cost.
Government jobs and green new jobs.
It's not. It's an expenditure. It's not a. It's not.
So when you're the MP at the committee who asks to see what the debt financing number, she won't give it to you. She'll tell you, well, it's okay because our GDP is going to be fine. Then if you switch your line of questioning to, well, what's our GDP and what's the assumptions you made in there, they won't talk about it. So, yeah, I looked at the budget. I mean, the budget is 267 pages, believe it or not, folks. I looked at the budget. And some of the lines in the budget are, they're crazy lines, man. There's some crazy lines in the budget, like money, again, I don't want to make light of a tragedy, but there was that tragedy at the Smith whatever it's called, the reserve in Saskatchewan there, where the guy went on a rampage and murdered 11 people with a knife. And so there's $46 million in the budget for counseling on the reserve next year. I'm like, wow. Like we just like to throw money away, and there's like 1,500 people on the reserve. So just cut them a check for 100,000 each, and we'll be done.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So it was speaking of people having to deal with less and less money around. This is what's happening with these rises in interest rates. And I know that this is the cure for the problem. Higher interest rates are actually the solution. Being too low for too long led to a lot of malinvestment. Now, the swallowing the pill, it's the medicine doesn't always taste good, right? This is the idea. No. And a lot of people are going to suffer from this. When people's mortgages, when they adjust next time around, we're looking at 40% increases in what they have to pay annually, based on these on their mortgages. And 40% is a lot for a lot of people. They're barely making it with their payments as they are. A lot of people are getting into houses that are way unaffordable, and the servicing of that debt is to the point where they're just scraping by. This is a large portion of their income.
It's too bad that let's put aside the government issue. It's too bad. I mean, there are Canadians. I wish a lot of Canadians had been a little bit smarter. Yes, when interest rate was 1%, what people should have done, if you were thinking of buying a $400,000 house, and then you wake up and you go, oh, interest rate is 100%, 1%. It's like, good for you, because now you can probably pay off that $400,000 house in a reasonable time. But when interest rates were 1%, what did people do? They didn't buy a $400,000 house. They just went, oh, great, let's buy a $600,000 house. Because, human nature is, what can I afford? So they went, well, I can afford a $2,000 a month payment. So then they borrow right to the max of what a 2 or 3 or whatever payment. So yes, those are the people that are going to hurt, because they overextended themselves. They bought, well, it's going to be a terrible problem for some people. And this is how interest rates work. It does work.
It's happened in the 80s. It's not, we're not strangers to this here in Canada.
No, my mom cried for 6 months straight because we basically lost the house and had to move and start all over. And mom talked about, the 20% interest rates in those days. So I lived through that. I know what that is. But yeah, what's going to happen is interest rates are going up. It's going to, they're not predicting. I mean, I know it's modeling about, like you said, 40% it's a 40% increase. And it translates into the fact that about 40% of the people that are going to go renew their mortgages are going to get a really bad shock. Some of them are going to get denied. So I don't know how this all works out. What happened in the past is if your $400,000 loan means that now you have to pay $5,000 a month when you were paying $3,000 a month before, and you can't afford it, you can't afford it. I don't know what people are going to do. And so we already know that about 50% of the average mortgage in Canada has a 3-year term. So about 33% of the mortgages have already been renewed during this string of interest rate increases. I don't think we're done with the increases. No. There's going to be about another third of the mortgages that will get renewed. I'm talking the low rate mortgages. So every mortgage that was borrowed under the 1% overnight interest rate, all those mortgages are up for renewal in between 2022 and 2025. A third have been renewed. There'll be a third this year. And if interest rates keep going, it's going to be ugly. People are going to lose their houses, but then that has the effect of bringing the prices back down, and things will adjust. I don't think we needed to go there. It's too bad that we had to we didn't have a government that managed a little bit better. And the stuff that our government keeps saying, or people who say, hey, we're not that bad, look at whatever Norway's at 8% and look at Venezuela's at 60%. I don't give a shit about those countries. I care about my country, and the old hey, we're not so bad, we're second last. I don't like that.
That's not a good concept. That's not a good concept.
No, it's not a good concept. Yeah.
No, for sure. Okay, well,
and just on that topic, I'm living it. I got a daughter who's looking for a house right now, and it's working. So she had expectations of buying perhaps a nicer house, and I'm telling her, Sarah, you're going to have to do like I did and like my parents did. Your first house is on the other side of the tracks. It's an older house that you can afford. That's all.
Or rent until you can wait it out. That's kind of the. That's what a lot of people are thinking right now, and for those people, their fingers are crossed. Oh, hopefully this puts a big dent in the housing market and brings housing prices way down. Of course, municipalities don't want housing prices to come down. That'll be a huge loss to their budgets. There's a lot of people invested in having these prices.
Now I can tell you that here in Calgary, we're building like mad. I mean, and luckily, we have a municipality here that seems to be pro building. It's very impressive, actually. I know you're coming here when you come here next month. Especially in the south, and then where you're going to go visit. I mean, they level off like giant areas, and then they put in all the roads and all the infrastructure, and then they build like 600 homes over a period of a couple of months. So
wow,
but 600 homes. If you have 4 people per home, that's only 2,400 immigrants that can go in there. I mean, we need apparently the targets for immigration this year is in the million. Like it's $1 million. It's not 200,000. You got to be careful
because you could end up with ghettos. Like, I mean, no joke. You have people coming from particular regions. They speak one language and then they don't integrate. We want people to come here and join our society. We don't want small pockets of other societies. That's the whole concept there.
Totally. No. And we have to be realistic. I mean, a lot of immigrants have the right mindset. They want to come here and they want to prosper. I get it. I mean, in fact, immigrants are usually the best people. Like, people think that an immigrant is somebody who's quitting where they left. And why would I want to quit her? It's like,
well, we're all a nation of immigrants, basically. Unless
we're
you're
a nation of immigrants, and
you kind of got to look at it like people wanted to move on to bigger and better things.
You and I moved, right? I mean, I wasn't born here. I was born 4,000 miles away. So, and I live in Alberta. And if you call me a quitter for having left what I worked behind, saying that I just gave up on the socialist government and came here, it's like, well, I did. I escaped.
Fair enough.
I didn't. I'm not a sucker for.
Speaking of people escaping, Maxime Bernier is escaping his old riding, and he's moving into a new one with the new by-election in Portage-Lisgar.
Can you bring up that poll? Did you, or we won't bring it up?
Oh, I have it. I have it here.
You have it on the screen.
Yeah, we can look at it here. This is the CPC, the Conservative Party, with 54% of the vote right
So I
now.
imagine all your listeners are Canadians, but maybe they're not. I don't know. But so we do have by-elections in this country. So once in a while, an MP can either resign or pass away or do something. So there's an election in the middle of a term. So there's an election in Manitoba,
Right.
and and Maxime Bernier is a former Conservative MP. He ran for the Conservative leadership, lost the Conservative leadership, and then went and formed his own party called the People's Party of Canada. And he's run now. This will be the third election he runs under the third or
I
fourth.
thought this was his third, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. This is,
Yeah, I think
I
it's
believe
his
it's his
third, right?
third.
He
Yeah.
ran. He's a Quebecer, so he runs in La BoC, which is the South Shore of Montreal. And then where did he run in the last election? Did he run 2 times there? And then this will be the first time he's running out of. Yeah, he has the opportunity to run. Anybody, in Canada, you don't have to live in the riding. I find that a little bit distasteful. Like, I think there should be a rule to me that you should have at least lived or have a residence in the riding. But Max doesn't live in Manitoba, and he's running in a riding in Manitoba. It's a good coincidence for him because it happens to be the riding where he did the best, where his party did the best in the last election. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
it is a brutally, if you look at it's south and east of Winnipeg, it's Mennonite country, so it's extremely conservative Christian. And so in the last election, I think it went 80% Conservative Party and 20% PPC. So if he had to pick a place to ride with the best shot, that would be it. But it so happens to be the one that came up with a by-election, so he's running there. That's fine. It's all legit. He's running there.
And it happens to
But
be the riding of Candace Bergen. She was the interim party leader after Aaron O'Toole
yes,
stepped down.
yeah, and she doesn't want to run anymore, so she stepped down. So it opened it up. Now there used to be a tradition in Canada where you would, when a party was created or had a leadership change, it's common for a leader to be sitting not in the House of Commons waiting for an election. So there used to be a tradition that if a riding came up for a by-election, a new leader who didn't have a seat yet would run in that riding, and other parties would sort of wash their hands and not present a strong candidate and let that leader have a chance to win so that he could be in the House of Commons. But it doesn't appear that Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, went there last week and campaigned alongside Brandon, the MP, the candidate, the Conservative candidate. They're not cutting any slack. Why would they? I mean, the way Max has been attacking Pierre, why would they? So they're not backing off. I'd say the Liberals are backing off, and in the poll, that's the funniest thing in the poll is Pierre is always or Max claims to be the ultra right wing candidate, but right now he's splitting the vote by attracting the few Liberal voters that are in that riding seem to be favoring Max at this point. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think Max. So by all accounts, looks like we're not going to honor the tradition. We present, the other parties are fighting him in this by-election. I don't think he's going to get elected. The big question is, does Max finally give up and go away, or does his party say, do a leadership review? I think he's going to find a positive way to spin this, but
I see the PPC as the party of Max. I mean, most people have a hard time naming anyone else in the party other than Maxime Bernier. I can't think of anyone. Nobody comes to mind. I know there are candidates. I know even Viva Fry, he ran under the PPC name.
Absolutely. I mean, they're so small as a party that what they do is they start over every election. So, if there was going to, they don't even have constituency associations and candidates in the wings. I mean, I'm a member. I'm still a member. Okay. I'm a member of the PPC and I get their newsletter. So they had a call out for candidates recently. They're starting the ball rolling to get ready for the next election. We think there's going to be an election in this country either in 2024 or 2025, but they always start months before the election and assign all their candidates. So their constitution's a little goofy. It's not, they're a party, but they're not very well organized because they don't have money. I mean, the only money they have, like once you get elected, if you get your 5 or 6 seats, maybe it's more than that. I think you need 8 seats, and to win 8 seats to be not just to be recognized as a party, but to get some help. Once you get that many seats, then the government of Canada gives the party budgets and some money to work with. But the PPC has no money, zero.
I haven't gotten there yet.
Neither does the NDP, which is why Jagmeet Singh doesn't. I think that's the real reason that Jagmeet does not want to defeat Trudeau. He can't run. The NDP have no money in the coffers right now to run an election, none whatsoever.
And they have no confidence either because of this betrayal to, well, their constituents. And I've said this many times before. They have 2 types of constituency. They have the NDP diehards, the people who believe in the platform, and then they have disaffected liberals. And they've abandoned both of those for this coalition with the Liberal Party and keeping them in power until 2025 or however long it actually goes. But this is it's a disillusionment, and it's a betrayal to the people who actually cast their ballots for the NDP in the last election.
And it's really weird that within their party they don't have sort of a rebellion. I mean, I guess I'm used to that. Look at what happened in Alberta when we had a leadership review and we punted Kenny and then we put Danielle in place and then away we go. So in the case of Max, I don't think they can. I don't think there's even a mechanism in place to have a leadership review. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. That election is in a couple of weeks, and I think the outcome is predetermined. What I'm more interested in is what does Max do after this.
Yeah, it's really a tight race for second place, I guess, at this point.
But and I've been known online for slamming Max. Okay, yes, and I do slam Max, but I'll say it publicly. Yes, Max has some good ideas, folks. Yes, he has, because you'll probably have viewers that will come over at me right now. So let's clear the air. I think Max has some great ideas. So would I like him and his party to be in the House of Commons? Absolutely, I would. I mean, I even considered voting for him in the last election. But what I don't like right now, me personally, is I don't have a long game. So Trudeau is absolutely destroying the country. Like some of the stuff Trudeau's doing, the carbon tax, the gay alliance, the Chinese interference. It's just he's taking us in the wrong direction. Inflation out of control, budgets out. So I need him out. I need him out. And then people will say, well, don't you have a long game? No, I don't. I don't have a long game. And people say, well, the next guy could be worse than Trudeau. No, he can't. I'm an adult. I'm 55 years old. I've been and I've never been in this country ruled by somebody worse than Trudeau. I don't think there can be somebody worse than Trudeau.
His dad was close. A lot of people would contend.
Yeah. Okay. I was when his dad was right up until 1982. Yeah. No, I don't think anybody. And God, we never even talked about that today on Trudeau, right? The Trudeau, the Trudeau Poilievre distraction in the House of Commons over the allegations. You talked about that we talked about that.
We talked about that on the weekend. Yeah. There was a conclusion to that. So you teased that. So I'll just say what the conclusion was. So Poilievre was asked directly about that by reporters at a press conference, and they asked him why did he go with this innuendo? Why did he go with this salacious story? And he says what he was talking about was the fact that Trudeau has never followed through with anything. So when I speculated on that, that's exactly what he ended up going with. Whether or not he actually was pulling that innuendo in the House of Commons or not, this is his story, and that's what he's sticking to. He's saying that he called on Trudeau about his record as a teacher because he doesn't follow through with anything. He's got all kinds of promises, and he's got all kinds of he brags about stuff that he never completes, and that's what they're going with,
including teaching. He didn't finish his teaching job. After that he studied engineering. He never finished that. The guy rarely follows through with anything. So
he's definitely followed through with destroying our economy. So we're gonna have to reel that one back.
Back to that. I mean, I need him gone. I need Trudeau gone. And
I think we'll just end it at that. Marty, thank you so much for joining me today. And where can people find you?
Marty Up North, and on YouTube and on Twitter. And I'm just getting ready. So I don't think we'll be able to do this show next Wednesday, although we might. Send me the link and let's try. But I'm going hiking for 5 days, and I'm supposed to come out on Tuesday. But you know how these things go. Sometimes I hike and I might enjoy it a little too much and stay an extra day. Who knows? But yeah,
right.
that's where you find.
All right,
Yeah.
we'll do that. So yeah, we'll make sure links are always in the description below. And everybody, thanks for joining us for this conversation. We'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.
Good night, everyone. Cheers.